Chicago Estes. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Come have a seat.
Hola, Natalia. Or Natalie.
I'm going to be speaking Spanish for days. That's our New Year's resolution, is to learn to speak Spanish.
Well, you need to be teaching out there. You speak.
I know, you're learning in a hurry. Well, we've been down in Mexico, so
Oh, is that right?
I've been hearing Spanish
What
all week.
city?
We just went to Cancun.
Oh, okay.
I think the only Bible word you know how to say in Spanish is Jesus.
Jesus. Everybody knows it.
Yeah.
But what's the Spanish one for Bible?
Biblio, yeah, maybe. That sounds right.
Okay, so I know two.
I know church. Church is Iglesias.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we have that on the sign out front, right?
Yes.
Iglesias de Cristo.
So you about done. Look at you.
This is my last semester, and it's kind of a joke, so.
Why is it a joke?
Because when you're applying for jobs, you give them your GPA as of now. And so the classes I'm in now don't impact my GPA.
Oh.
Because I'll get them after I have the job already. So it's kind of just a survive to the end and you're fine. We'll see. But then I gotta study for the bar, and that's the hard stuff.
That's another thing. Which state you studying for?
I think I'll take the universal bar, and I think I'll probably end up in Tennessee, but it covers me for like Tennessee, Illinois, I think like 40 out of 50 of the states.
Oh, cool.
So that's nice.
I know. Back in the 70s, these guys had to pass the bar for each state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh.
They've got it's a universal bar exam, and then there will maybe be like 2 classes for the individual state that you have to just go attend.
Yeah. What the
I want to do child, so either criminal stuff or like
We get our mail for a while, you know.
Yeah.
in front of the person.
Nicole coming.
No, she's over with the team.
Everybody's great. Good up there. We had a lady sit up, somebody else trying to get it. She said, lady come like that.
Too bad.
Yeah.
Too bad. They should
It's
have
not
took it.
tomorrow morning, so.
Don't worry about it.
Hope we go over before that.
They should have done it.
Yeah.
You were away? Did you see your parents and all?
I didn't get to see mine. We normally see my parents for Thanksgiving, but there was sickness going around everywhere this year, so we didn't go. And then we got to see Nicole's parents. And then the girls in Austin and I went to Mexico for 6 days.
Oh, which part?
Cancun.
No.
84, 85 degrees was nice.
Who speaks Spanish?
Uh,
None of us.
I see. No habla español.
That's the resolution.
That's right.
That's it. I resolve not to resolve. That's my resolution. Because I never did it.
I started doing New Year's
We're
with us
just we're
instead of
not going to do
resolutions.
revelations.
So I did one
We're
that was
just
like
gonna
try
look
as
at
many
some
different types
verses
of
to get us
pasta in a year. Like
Oh,
strawberry.
I
That was fun.
That's a fun.
Yeah. And people started gifting me like weird pastas that they found.
All right.
And then there's no pressure.
That's right. None.
If you have to cook it and serve it, probably.
Well, good morning. I don't see anybody online just yet, but it's about time for us to get started. I'm going to be teaching today. What I can assure you of is we are not going to be looking at Revelations
Everybody does that.
today. So I understand Dan may have taught last week, and
He did Ruth.
yeah,
Everybody skips way back.
I heard that he had done Ruth this morning. I was online trying to find the lesson initially to see where were we in Revelations, and I could find the 22nd, December the 22nd. I couldn't find last week, but Michael had told me that there were some technical.
We didn't know
difficulties.
where that
Right,
thing was.
how to do it.
And even if we had known, I'm not sure that we would have been able
Right.
to.
Well, thank you
Get
to
it
Dan
online, so.
for doing Ruth. That's one of my favorite books to look at as well. But So I was looking at it, and I talked to, this just happened yesterday with Patrick. I learned of Alan being sick, so certainly we hope that Alan will get to feeling better. But as you saw in the announcements, we've got the Teen Connect that's coming up on the 26th. And that was kind of a last minute thing. It was originally going to be held, I think, at Naperville.
Yeah.
And they couldn't do it. So Patrick volunteered us to try to put something together by the 26th. So I saw a text between he and Nicole where he was saying, sorry, they're going to be planning for that today. He said, I'm not going to be able to do that because I'm teaching for Alan. So I just reached out to him and said, hey, as long as I don't have to teach Revelations with less than 24 hours of notice, I'm happy to teach class. So what I thought we would do today, as we're going through class, this is the first Sunday that we've gotten together for the new year. And as Ron mentioned, as he was in his comments, this is often a time that people do resolutions and things like that. I don't think we're going to do group resolutions today as a class, but what I did do was just look at some different scriptures from the Bible. I have 12 that I've kind of identified that we can talk about as many of those today. What I thought we would do is just read some of those passages, talk about how it may apply to us. How does it hit you? What does it mean to you? Things that might inspire us as we're going into the new year. But like I said, I have kind of pulled together 12 that can help facilitate us. We may not address all of those 12 in the time that we have today, but what I would also encourage you as we're going through, you may have particular Bible verses that are important to you or motivational to you or, inspirational for you. So as we're going through, if you've got a verse that you would like to read and have us talk about, just raise your hand or interrupt me or what have you and say, I've got a verse that's on my heart. And we'll look at it as a class and talk about it and go from there. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Does that work for everybody? So whether you've got your Bible, your phone, whatever it may be, we're gonna jump around and look at quite a few verses today. To help me, I may get you guys to read some of the verses as we're going through that, and then I'll start some discussion as we're going through. But with the new year, just out of curiosity, how many of you in here typically set New Year's resolutions for yourself? By show of hands. Uno? I can't really see you, Natalie, so you may have to shake your leg if you're wanting to raise your hand.
I have in the past, but I usually fail. So this year, I'm just in general going to try to be a better person.
No, right, it's me in general.
Right.
Because I'm tired of it.
You're a New Year's resolution person?
Yes. To take better care of myself. And I've changed my diet. I've been into herbs. And they're making me feel pretty good. And my doctor had recommended magnesium. And I'm sleeping now at night. But it doesn't quite wear off,
right?
So I might doze in and out. I'm feeling better.
Well, I think we could all have a resolution that says, if we make it to your age, I hope we look like you. Because you're about as healthy as I see. But what about spiritual resolutions? Anybody make spiritual resolutions? As I'm going to read the Bible from cover to cover. I know sometimes, people do that, or I'm going to do blank, or I'm going to pray 3 times a day, or whatever it may be. It's a time of year where it's good. But what I would say is, whether you make resolutions or you don't make resolutions, it's always a good time at the start of the year to get recentered in who we are as Christians, to get recentered in the Word, and whether it be a book of the Bible, a chapter of the Bible, a verse that's only 4 words long. There are a lot of things within the Bible that we can read and that will help us as we get prepared to go through that. So That's kind of what I wanted us to do as we go through today. And it's a great way for me to not have to teach and you to not have to go on the book of Revelations. And we'll leave that to the professionals. I know Alan's quite good at it. Michael, I think you've done a lot of study in the book of Revelation, so we'll save that for another one. But my first verse that I wanted us to start with today is out of Lamentations. It's Lamentations chapter 3, verses 22 to 24. I think I first learned about this verse as a song. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases.
What chapter?
Y'all know that song?
Which chapter?
Lamentations chapter 3, verses 22 to 24. And when we get there, if someone wouldn't mind to read that loud and proud for us, I would appreciate that.
Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion, therefore I will wait for him.
Love it. So like I said, I learned that verse, I think, as a song growing up. I don't know if they sang that in the churches up here, but in the churches in the South, that was a common song for the youth groups. It would go, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in him. And for me, I happen to be somebody that likes singing a lot. You know, quite frankly, there are different things, and I think I've talked about this in the class, there are different things that touch different people different ways. Some people can read a Bible verse and it touches them. Some people, when they're praying, they do that. For me, there's something about the words of song that was there. So I used to travel a lot. So I would do about 125 flights a year in my prior life before we decided to move to Chicago. And so I would listen to music. I had it on my iPad, plugged my earphones in. So as I'm flying, I would listen to Christian music. And it was kind of a way of me doing a devotional for myself. It kind of started the week for me, et cetera, et cetera. But I wanted to start with this verse because I think it's got some powerful points in it. One, the love of the Lord never ceases, and his mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. So think about that. What does that mean to you when you hear that they are new every morning? What does that mean for us? Yeah.
And before they will break, God has made something new for you. It's almost every day. Before they will break, he has a plan for your life.
Mm-hmm.
What you eat, what you wear, what you drink, wherever you put your head. He has made a plan for it. And it's almost every day, it changes.
Yep.
It's not just one thing every day. So there are so many new things every morning.
Yep.
That's daybreak. God do something new in your life. That is how I understand it, because maybe today you may see things as hard, or maybe, oh, how am I going to do this or that? But today you are thinking of it like that. Immediately they break, you see that the problem is solved.
Right.
So there are new every morning.
I love that. And I think, for me, it's sometimes when I read that, for whatever reason, it's like backwards to how I think it should be. Because when I think about myself and I think about waking up in the morning, I think about looking at myself in the mirror and say, I need to renew my love for God every day, right? We think about that, but it's almost weird to me to think about, I open my eyes in the morning, and in reality, God has renewed his love for us every single day, right? And
Yes.
that's just a different way, I think about my obligations to him, but it's him. He chooses
Mhm.
every day
Mhm.
to renew his love for us, regardless of what we've done that prior day, right? His mercies are there. They're extended to us day in, day out, every day.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
that's our steps.
He does. It says he is our portion. What is a portion? What do you think about when you hear a portion?
When I'm serving food and Will gets the biggest part.
That's exactly right. That's what I think about with that. So I grew up in a family of 5 kids. There were 4 boys and then a girl. We were all busy, but no matter what, we had dinner at 6:00. And you weren't late for dinner, period. That was our family time together. With 4 boys, portion control could be a challenge, right? So I know, like, one of my favorite things to eat growing up was fried okra. My mama made the best fried okra. And so whenever we had fried okra, there would be 2 big bowls, equal in size. One of those was for Steve, and one of those was for the family.
No.
We learned that was the special meal, and that was my portion, right? And I think it's that way with God, right? The Lord is our portions, and we can have that hope in Him. Any other comments on that particular verse?
The one thing that this verse reminds me of, which is maybe a little silly, but like when I come downstairs in the morning and my dog sees me for the first time in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
she's as excited to see me as if she hasn't seen me in a year because she has so much love in her heart. And I think that's the kind of love that like we are supposed to have for God and God has for us, that it's new every morning and just renews itself endlessly.
Are you saying God wags His tail for us every
I'm saying,
morning?
I think of the dog-human relationship, I'm probably the dog and God is the human, but that kind of loyalty. Yeah.
No, that's great. The next verse I have, go ahead, sorry.
I think it kind of reminds us to start out every day new and not remember what we might have had, some problem we might have had with another person the day before. Because I mean, if you're honest, sometimes, it says, I know somewhere, don't go to bed angry.
Right.
Well, yeah.
Don't let
but
the sun
somebody-
set on your wrath. Yeah,
Don't wake up angry either, because, sometimes it's hard to forget what another person or, things that happened the day before or even before that. So, if God can forget our numerous things that probably would make him angry, I think maybe we need to try to let other things slide that we might have against people.
Listen, and I think it's a great principle in our relationship with God. It's a great principle in God's relationship with us, but it's also a great principle in our relationship with others. I've been married for 31 years. There are mornings that I have woken up and I have not renewed my feelings in the morning, right? I may still be angry about something or take something for granted versus having a reset and a refresh and being re-energized to start another day that I'm blessed to be with Nicole or to have wonderful children. But you mentioned forgetting, so I want to jump to that. So let's look at Isaiah chapter 43. Isaiah 43, verse 18 and 19. Isaiah 43, 18 and 19. And whoever gets there can read that for us. Isaiah 43, verse 18 and 19.
But forget all that. It is nothing compared to what I'm going to do. For I am about to do something new. See, I have already begun. Do you not see it? I would make a pathway through the wilderness. I would create rivers in the dry wasteland. The wild animals in the field will thank me, the jackals and owls too. For giving them water in the desert, yes. I will make rivers in the dry wasteland, so my chosen people can be refreshed.
That's great. And so if you look at verse 18, it says, remembering not the former things, or not considering the things that of old. And God says, I've got something new for you. He's talking to the Israelites here. He says, I've got something new for you. And I think that played in perfectly, Diana, with what you were saying about forgetting the past. We need to do that too. And the start of the new year is a good time to kind of take out the eraser, right? Go to the board and just erase it. What's been burdening you for the last year? What's been weighing you down? What have you been feeling bad about yourself? What have you been mad about somebody else? What have you been mad with God about? And say, I'm going to erase that. Because God has done that, right? He erases, he says, your sins I remember no more. He has erased those for us, and he's got something planned for us. And I think that's a good way to do it, because the fact of the matter is we all get together on Sunday mornings, some of us on Wednesday nights together, and we know certain things about each other, but we don't know all things, right? And each of us have particular burdens that we might be carrying, you know, whether that is family strife that's going on in your family. It could be an illness that you're dealing with that's going on. It could be work challenges that you've got. It could be, hey, I'm about to graduate from law school and I don't know where I'm going to be or what I'm going to be doing, you know. And, you know, I think when you look at this and you say, I'm doing a new thing, it springs forth. I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. Do rivers in the desert make any sense? Do deserts have rivers? Typically not, right? But, you know, we are serving a God who can speak and create the world into being, who can have someone put forth their hand and the rivers part, right? And he doesn't necessarily act in the same way that he did when we read about some of those Old Testament, but he's still acting in ways that we see and ways that we may not see. You know, he is still acting. And so, you know, I think as we are at the start of the year, it's a time to kind of put in the past what may have been some of those burdens and look to God, look to Jesus, and to say, I know that you got plans for me, right? Doesn't he say that in the Bible? I know the plans that I have for you. Plans for you to prosper, right? And put our trust in God that he can take care of us. He can make the bad be good. He can make whatever the challenge is that we're facing to make all things work together for good. Any comments on that particular verse?
Well, I just say one thing. Sometimes, you know, when we see this, forget the former things, don't dwell on the past. Sometimes you gotta let that good stuff go.
Mm-hmm.
You might wake up today and you got a challenge. It's something else that you weren't expecting, and you still know that God is doing a new thing, and that's part of the new thing. And sometimes that new thing that's a challenge is what causes the rivers to come in the desert.
Yeah.
So sometimes we have
That's
to forget about
beautiful, Barbara.
that we ate really good.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And
So
you know, we're going to be in different places, and sometimes we have to look at ourselves, look at our life in a different lens, depending upon what's going on at the particular time. I remember when we first moved up here, you know, we moved from Tennessee. We moved from the Bible Belt. I think I've shared this with you before. We went to a church that had 800 people in it, a youth group that was close to 100, right? I was a deacon there, but I could have gone to church there and done nothing. I would have gone to church and gotten lifted up because there were hundreds of people that were doing things. right? And you come up to Chicagoland, and there's not a church on every corner. And the church you go to is probably not gonna have 800 people in it. It might have 8, it might have 18, it might have 8, right? And your lens has to change, and I talk to the girls about that when you're here is, you know, sometimes you're in a place where it's about what can the church do for me? And sometimes you're in a place that you say, what do I need to do for the church? Right? And God works in both of those circumstances. I think that's kind of what you're talking about
Yes.
there, Barbara. That's great. Yep.
In terms of the forgiveness thing and not remembering the things of old, I worked in the criminal court in Memphis over the summer, and one of the things I did a lot of was expungements. And you'd think that, like, even if you get like expunged for a crime, like they still keep a record of it somewhere. And no, like a huge issue for the whole summer was if the court expunges it, it is completely wiped from the record. They shred all documentation. They give you a sheet of paper that says this has been expunged, and that's the only proof it's been expunged at all. And if you lose that, then like if anything comes up, you can't prove that you're no longer like have this on your record. And I think that even like when we're thinking about like God and like his forgiveness, that like, yeah, we've been forgiven, but like obviously he still keeps a record and still in the back of his mind thinks about those things. But I think it's more like it is a total forgiveness. Like we've washed clean every time that we repent and are forgiven. And the only record that we have of it is if we still feel guilty and aren't letting ourselves forget and move on.
Yeah, great point, Natalie. Next verse is Philippians chapter 4. Dan, while we're looking at that, thank you for teaching last week.
Thanks for teaching this week.
But much like you, I'm not teaching Revelations. So
I don't want to get in there either.
we are just looking at some passages that I think are relevant to the start of a new year and seeing how that moves us and inspires us. So Philippians chapter 4, verses 4 through 7. This is another song that I learned growing up. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. Philippians 4, 4 through 7. Someone read that for us.
Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus.
So I think at the end of the year, we've come through the holidays. Most of us have had kind of a break from work as we've gone through this. And so this is a wonderful reminder for us to remember to go to God, that we can praise him, that we can go to him with what our needs are, what our requests are, and kind of resetting our mind to be another year of thankfulness and another year of rejoicing. What does rejoice mean? What's another word for rejoice?
Celebrate.
Celebrate. That's a good one. What else?
Just gonna say, make glad, be glad.
Be glad. Be happy, right? Praise. Be uplifted. How hard is it to rejoice if your shoulders are slumped? How hard is it to rejoice if your head is low, right? So it's kind of an action word, an action verb that you kind of have to, if you say, I'm going to be rejoiceful, you have to kind of make an intentional decision to do something, right? And there's nothing wrong. There are times that we're going to be sad. There are times we're going to be mad. There's going to be times we're depressed or whatever it may be. But, you know, I think at the start of the year, it's a good time for us to stop and to rejoice and to be grateful and to be happy in the circumstances that we're in. The passage that I was looking at stopped at verse 7, but you know, somebody read verse 8 for us, because I think it's a beautiful, beautiful verse in the Bible.
And now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise.
So if we want to be rejoiceful, I think this is a verse we could probably put on our mirrors every morning and read, because in today's society, what we are consumed with in everything that's around us is typically not what is true, typically not what is honorable, typically not what is just, right? Because what we get bombarded with is what's going bad in the world, what is unjust in the world. How many murders did we have in Chicago this past weekend? You know, where did we have a terrorist attack? Where is there hatred and evil and unjustness that's going on? And when that is so consuming around us, it's really easy to get to a place where you're kind of in a what I call the oh ain't it awful. Barbara, you may do this in your work, but you know, when I'm doing trainings for supervisors and things like that, one of the games that we play is the oh ain't it awful game, because it happens at work. And so you have interactions with people, call it the water cooler talk or whatever it may be. But you got to have someone, if you want to be a leader in the work environment, and this can be in your personal environment, there's got to be somebody that steps off the game wheel, right? And so we do this game where you come up and somebody says something that's going wrong at work, right? And then the next person said, well, if you think that's bad, ... Well, if you think that's bad, but who's going to be the person that stops the game, that changes the narrative, that says something positive? Whether you're talking about a coworker, whether you're talking about a boss, whether you're talking about a policy, whatever it may be, true leaders step up and think about what is good, what's noble, what's honorable, and changes the perspective. And I think that's what this verse is telling us too. If we want to be people who rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice, fill your mind with thoughts that are true, that are honorable, that are noble, that are of good character, et cetera, et cetera. And it makes it a lot easier if we try to fill ourselves with those things to be a person that is happy, is glad, is praising, et cetera, et cetera.
I think we just lost a modern day example of that, Jimmy Carter.
Mm-hmm.
You might not agree with his politics. I didn't agree with his politics, so I didn't vote for him. But I do think he was a great person, a great Christian example, and he changed the world.
Mm-hmm.
Him and his wife, and literally changed the world in some ways. And he's just an example of that. That can be done. What can be done if we really put our mind on it and follow this verse? I think he had this verse in mind when he accomplished all the great things he accomplished.
Yeah, I grew up in South Georgia, a town called Americus, about 7 miles from Plains.
Yeah, wow. So you had a lot of.
Was quite familiar with the Carter family, and you know, he was a good man, a really good man, and his reputation, well beyond politics, the work that he did with Habitat for Humanity was just of good reputation. And that's one of the things that we're told to be as Christians. It's one of the things when you're looking at like qualifications of elders and of deacons and things like that, is that you are to be of good repute or good reputation in the community, so that people aren't talking about it. That's not just a quality for an elder or deacon or a minister. That's a quality that all of us should have as Christians, is to be of good repute. And we do that by being joyful, being positive, by loving others. We'll get to that in just a second. But let's jump to Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 through 6. Natalie could probably quote this one without looking it up. We had this, I know, is one of the last leaders themes that we had, so she had to write a speech on this one. And I know when she graduated, this is one of the verses that from mom and dad of words of wisdom. So Proverbs 3:5-6. Someone read that for us.
Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will make your paths straight.
So trust in the Lord and don't lean on your own understanding. What does that mean to not lean on your own understanding?
Well, don't trust your own understanding as to whether or not this is the right thing, because it doesn't look right. That looks a little crooked there. You need to go left instead of right. You know, and just say, this God has this. I have no idea why I'm going left. I think I should go right. But God has you going a certain way, and you have to trust that God is the one who knows best.
Right.
So that's how I see it.
I think that's great. Any other comments on that? I think about it like we've all heard of the providence of God, right? And I think for each of us, we could probably hold a rear view mirror up, right? And look back in our lives and say, where was God working in my life? And it's often really easy in hindsight. Hindsight is 20/20, right? It's often easy to look backwards and say, oh, I see what God was doing right there. But it's really, really hard in the moment sometimes to see what is the plan that God has for me. How is he working in my life? What am I supposed to do in this particular situation? And, you know, I think it is our nature to try to solve things ourselves, right? We're independent, we're self-supporting, we are, I can do it, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, I think of this maybe as a parallel passage with James 4:10, right? James 4:10 says, humble yourself before the Lord and he will lift you up. And I think that's the spirit of what they're talking about in this particular passage is have a forbearance to rely upon God. Seek him, seek his will, seek his understanding, seek his guidance in our lives, rather than saying, I know better than God, right? I don't know what the verse is, but I know there's a verse that says his ways are not our ways, his thoughts are not our thoughts. And it can be very easy, especially when things are going good in our life, to become arrogant. You know, sometimes it's a lot easier when you're dealing with struggles in your life, or you're dealing with a health issue, I've lost a job, and you're kind of at the bottom of the barrel, and you say, oh God, I need you, right? And it can be sometimes harder when things are going great. I just got that new promotion. I got a new grandbaby, you know, whatever it may be. In the best of times, it can be, sometimes we forget them. What happened with the Israelites through their journeys?
Over and over.
Over and over. What happened?
They forgot.
Draw near to God and he will draw near to you, right? And so they would trust in God. They would lean on him. And what would happen?
They would have some trouble and forget.
Everything would go good. And then the next thing you know, as soon as things are going good, they forget about this God. They start building idols and walking away and forgetting, you know, what was stamped upon their forehead, and things just fall apart, boom. And you read the Old Testament, and it's just a cycle like this over and over. It's pretty easy for us a few thousand years later to read back on it and go, they weren't real smart. But in the moment, we tend to fall into the same trap sometimes with what we're doing.
So therefore, bring all our decisions before God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, in the moment, we may not see it, but we should certainly seek it, right? So even if you don't see it, we need to be seekers of understanding the will of God. Any other questions or comments on that one before we jump?
I like that example you gave about rear view. You can look in the rear view and see how God made that straight.
Yeah.
And you can trust God going forward because of that. So I think that's a good example.
Excellent.
There's a quote I like that says, do good recklessly. And I think that that is sometimes like, even when to a normal person, it would be like, this person doesn't deserve help and they've proven they don't deserve help. Part of being a Christian and believing in God's ability to help you is saying, well, even if the world says that this is a waste of time, I'm still going to do the good thing for the sake of doing the good thing.
Yep.
And it's not a waste because I'm doing it for God.
Yes, that's the right.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep. With what measure we forgive, he forgives, right? That's a hard verse to take. That's a hard, sometimes I just want to punch them in the chin.
Thank you.
Right? Maybe an elbow.
You don't want it back,
I don't want it back. You gotta stop to think about that. All right, let's look at 1 Corinthians 15, 56 to 57. We'll hit this one quick so we can go to some others. But 1 Corinthians 15, you know what? Let me turn over there because I actually think I want to read a little bit more than just the 15. First Corinthians 15, 56. Actually, let's read 55 to 58. Whoever gets there.
Death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting? For sin is the sting that results in death, and the law gives sin its power. But thank God who gives us victory over sin and death through our Lord Jesus Christ. So, my dear brothers and sisters, be strong and immovable. Always work enthusiastically for the Lord, for you know that nothing you do for the Lord is ever useless.
Right. Oh, death, where is your sting? Right. And so as we start a new year, I think one of the things when I read this kind of ties back to Revelation. What do we learn in the book of Revelations? Through all of these crazy analogies, et cetera, what is the theme of Revelations?
There's hope.
We win, right?
Yeah.
There's hope.
Yeah,
We win. And I think that's what this verse is saying to us. It's like, oh, death, where is your sting? You know, you used to be able to kill me. Matter of fact, you could still kill me physically, but you can't kill me spiritually. I'm going to be alive forever because of what God did. He has redeemed us forever, and we're going to live with him in heaven. And so when we're walking into the year, listen, we're going to face bad things in this earth. The earth is not guaranteed to be perfect. Bad things are going to happen: sickness, death, tragedy, poorness, you know, whatever it may be. But if we take a step back and think about it from a spiritual perspective, we know that every year when we start that year, we won. It's not like the Chicago Bears. It's not. You know, they're going into the game tonight wondering, are they going to set a record for 11 losses in a row, the most they've ever had? In our game of life, we're walking into 2025 knowing this: I won. I will win. Right? And because of that, we know that regardless of what we might go through, what'd you say? Our labor is not in vain. Isn't that what that verse said in 58? We can know that our labor is not in vain. Questions or comments? So be pumped. It's good to be on a winning team, right? Have any of you ever been on a team that just wasn't very good? My freshman year of college, I went and played baseball at Freed Hardeman. They eliminated all scholarship athletes from the year before on the baseball team except for 5. And they brought in a few transfers, but mostly freshmen. I played baseball in college because we played like 55 games. I was better in football, but I thought 55 games? I'm gonna be out of class all the time. That sounds like the sport for me. We won 7 games my freshman year. That season gets long.
Mhm.
You show up at the game and you're like, how bad are we gonna get beat today? Right? The Bears probably feel like that. Yeah. They have found more ways to lose a game because winning is a habit and sometimes losing is a habit too. But in this life, spiritually, we're on the championship team. No matter what happens, you know what? We could be down 11 points with 42 seconds left to go in the game. And I'm not sure exactly how it's going to happen, but we're going to win. That's what this verse is telling us. Let's hop over to 2 Corinthians chapter 12. 2 Corinthians 12:10. Actually, you know what? Let's read, I'll read 10 and then we'll bounce back. This is Paul. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weakness, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. What do we know? What are some things that we know about Paul that he may have said, for when I am weak, I know I'm strong? What are some things we know about him?
He had a thorn in the flesh.
He had a thorn in the flesh.
And well, I don't know here if he was in prison.
Yeah.
But
he was imprisoned. He had a thorn in the flesh. He was in prison. What else about Paul? Stone.
Shipwrecked.
We know he had a lot of pride, and God broke that pride down so he could accept his grace.
Yep.
So
he was very zealous, doing the wrong thing, right? He was beaten. Some people say he had poor eyesight. See, I write with my hands, how the large letters are there. Some people said he might have had a speech impediment. We don't really know what the thorn in the flesh. But if you jump back up to verse 8, read what it says. He says, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this. This is the thorn that's in the flesh. He says, 3 times I pleaded with God that it would leave me. But God said, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. You think Paul had a pretty good relationship with God? He had seen Jesus, right?
Yeah, he did. Turned his life around 180 degrees.
And you would think, as good as Paul was, if he said, hey, God, I got a favor of you. Would you mind to get rid of this thorn? But God said no. Why did he tell him no?
The thorn helped him. The thorn helped him.
We don't know exactly how or why, but I know what God said to him was, my grace is sufficient. And I don't know if that means that maybe God felt if he removed that whatever it was that in some ways was inhibiting him might put him in a place where he's not thinking about the things that he needs to be thinking about or whatever. And we face similar things in life. We all probably have something that is a thorn in our flesh or something that we look at that, when we pull that rear view mirror up and we look at it in the rear view mirror, you go, you know what? I thought I wanted that. I thought I needed that. I thought whatever it was. But in hindsight, I'm afraid of what might have happened if I had gotten what I thought that I wanted. And we know that Paul, when he says here, he says, for the sake of Christ, then I'm content. He learned to be content in his weakness, in the insults, in the hardships, in the persecutions, because he said, I have learned that when I am weak, I'm strong. What made him strong?
Well, he relied more on God,
right,
rather than his own strength.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to kind of what we were talking about when we were talking about trusting the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, how in good times, sometimes we can get overconfident in ourselves and become self-reliant and become our own God within that. And, for whatever reason, God didn't remove this, but he has learned to not let himself be praised, but to be weak, because that made him strong in Christ. Any comments on that? Oh, I think we're at time, sorry.
I just said, if anybody could have been self-reliant, it was Paul. He was an outstanding person from the get-go. Scholarly, physically, he must have been pretty strong. Endure what he did. So God had to find a way to turn him around, and he did. And he 180-degree turnaround.
Absolutely. Hey, Jacob, love you, brother. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your comments today as we went through that a little unexpectedly. But I hope some of those passages you'll remember as you go through this year. And let's all have a wonderful new year in God.
Thanks for taking the class.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. See you guys.
We'll see you, brother Jacob.
Hey, Jacob.
He gets over this, this cold and gets back next week.